object to seeing my country being destroyed from within. That's what infuriates me, that our political leaders are not doing the same research that we as citizens are capable of.
Everybody knew this was coming. Here it is. You can call it whatever you want, but it's tyranny. And it's tyranny for the whole enchilada, the entire world.
No more Newsom! No more Newsom!
Keep in mind, you were given freedom of choice and the divine spark. And you need to defend those things with everything you have.
Hey friends, Sean from SGT Report here. This is a Red Alert broadcast. In all my years of covering the New World Order and the Deep State, I have never, ever seen a full court press like this one. They're locking down societies and economies all over the planet. They are seizing the guns of the people in our neighboring nations, and they want you to continue to shelter in place and go bankrupt while they prepare a vaccine for you and your family. Before we begin this incredibly important interview with my friend Crow 777, just a quick word from this interview sponsor. Collagen may be the closest thing we'll ever get to a real fountain of youth. In fact, many health experts now agree that consuming collagen is as crucial as it gets to renewing and revitalizing how you look and feel. Collagen is the most abundant protein in your body, and it essentially is the glue that holds you together. In fact, after age 20, people produce about 12% less collagen in their skin each and every decade. This means by the time you're middle age, you could be producing less than half the collagen you did in your youth. Even worse, things like poor diet, smoking, pollution, and yes, stress can delete your collagen levels even faster. So visit my site, healthwithsgt.com, and purchase the only collagen on the market that I trust. Make your hair healthy and younger looking, support joint flexibility, strengthen nails, teeth, and gums, promote strong, healthy muscles, tendons, and ligaments, stronger bones, and digestive health. Support your health today with collagen. This is my trusted source. I'll leave the link below this interview. And we're back. Thanks so much for tuning in, friends. It's great to have you back. I've got a lot to cover today. We're going to talk about the noose that's tightening around the neck of liberty, once again with my friend Crow 777. How are you, Crow?
Good, man. Thanks for having me back.
Hey, thanks for coming on. Short notice. I really appreciate it. You're a gamer. That's what I love about you. You're always ready to have a conversation, aren't you?
Yeah, well, in times like this, you got to build some bridges, man, in every direction you can.
All right, well, listen to this. Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, has banned assault weapons across the nation. Listen to this. Let's process this together, shall we?
Today, we are closing the market for military-grade assault weapons in Canada. We are banning 1,500 models and variants of these firearms by way of regulations. These weapons were designed for one purpose and one purpose only: to kill the largest number of people in the shortest amount of time. There is no use and no place for such weapons in Canada. For many families, including many Indigenous people, firearms are part of traditions passed down through generations, and the vast majority of gun owners use them safely, responsibly, and in accordance with the law, whether it be for work, sport shooting, for collecting, or for hunting. But you don't need an AR-15 to bring down a deer.
All right, so prior to this, in his speech, he called to mind for, of course, the folks of Canada, the Nova Scotia shooting. So this is all being done on the back of a rogue shooter, just like they did in Australia when they disarmed Australia. I'm going to get deeper into this in a second, but your thoughts on the tyrant in Canada named Justin Trudeau.
Yeah, I thought they made things like that to defend yourself from tyranny. I thought that was the main purpose for private people to own them. But, I don't know what the rules are in Canada. But I didn't know we were going to talk about this. So if I get this wrong, I'll at least be in the ballpark. We have a thing here in the United States called, I think it's the DICT Act. And it basically says you can't abridge the ownership of firearms in any way. People should go look it up. What this comes down to is the old, can I do a thing in the light of day, or do I have to do a thing in the dark of a closet while I'm telling lies? And as you pointed out, that rogue shooter is the excuse for this. And we know what the rogue shooter is, so we know what this is. And, it doesn't take much to put one and one together. We've arrived here in the era where you are going to try to be convinced that crazy is normal. For my part, I'm not buying, but this is all quite transparent at this point.
Before you got on, I was thinking about the nature of this interview and the troubling things I need to share in this interview. And what popped into my head is that the name of this interview should probably be New World Order Full Court Press. Okay, what's happening right now globally is, I think, unprecedented in my lifetime. They're saying what's happening with the coronavirus lockdown in the United States is quote-unquote unprecedented. And they say it's the new normal. So let's continue here. I think this is very important. So my friend Spiro tweeted out this. I'll just play it. It's 16 seconds. It's basically what you just heard from Trudeau. And he said, "This is what tyranny looks like."
So, effective immediately, it is no longer permitted to buy, sell, transport, import, or use military-grade assault weapons in this country.
To which I responded, never, ever, ever forget whose interests this tyrant represents and to whom he swore an oath of service and fealty. And I linked to this video. I have it all queued up here.
I, Justin P.J. Trudeau, do swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, Queen of Canada, her heirs and successors. So help me God. I, Justin P.J. Trudeau, do solemnly and sincerely swear that I shall be a true and faithful servant to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II as a member of Her Majesty's Privy Council for Canada. I will, in all things to be treated, debated, and resolved in Privy Council, faithfully, honestly, and truly declare my mind and my opinion. I shall keep secret all matters committed and revealed to me in this capacity, or that shall be secretly treated of in council.
He goes on. It gets darker. He swore a fealty not to the people of Canada, but to his queen, to whom he has pledged his secrecy.
Yeah, I didn't know you could have a 16-year-old pledge on the hairs of the queen, but that's a really cute red and black flower he's wearing too.
Yeah. Well, expand on it. What do you think? The power behind the PM of Canada, the dancing fool, is not the people. It's the Queen of England. And people need to know. They need to understand who just disarmed them.
Let's take a step back here. As we started to get in all this, that started on March 11, by the way, I stayed up late that night and just after midnight posted a blog. The day it began, I was already laying it down because I've been spending years talking about this thing that's coming. Well, here is this thing. What this comes down to is very well represented in what used to be on the sides of all the police cars in San Diego where I grew up. That was to protect and to serve, was on the side of every cop car. Now they've changed it to keeping the peace. Well, what was wrong with the old way of saying things, to protect and to serve? Clearly there was a problem with it. But what this comes down to is there are tons and tons of people who are unhappy with what's going on here. And at the end of the day, what this is going to come down to is we're probably going to get what we deserve and we're probably going to get what we demand. And so if we kind of buckle under to things like this, and I can't speak to Canada because I have no idea what their right to bear arms or a constitution, maybe the Magna Carta, I don't know. I don't know what they're under, but I do know what they're under here. And I can also point out that even Mr. Trump swore an oath to uphold the Constitution. He did it in an underhanded way, as many of them have, to the best of his ability, whatever that means. And you will recall that Mr. Obama, in all his wisdom, swore the oath of office twice, apparently, because he made a mistake on some word or some nonsense. Well, go look at the image of the man behind him when he swears in the second time. Everybody knew this was coming. We're here. Here it is. You can call it whatever you want, but it's tyranny. And it's tyranny for the whole enchilada, the entire world. And to address the scale of what's gone on here, this is bigger than anything we have a historical reference for. This is touching more of the world than suppose World War II did, right? If you want to go back to the stock market crash, that didn't affect as much of the world as this is. So we can see what this is. And what it comes down to, is, will people be convinced that their neighbor can kill them, that they need to cover up their face, that touching someone can make you so sick that you'll die, or will we grow up and treat each other well and demand better? To me, it's really that kind of simple, though I don't want to belittle how astonishing this little skit is that is unrolling in front of our faces.
Yeah, and I have another important clip to play, a soundbite, a letter of warning coming out of Spain in a second. But I think that Nova Scotia shooting was around April 20th. You mentioned March 11th as the date this all kicked off. Is that, what, the date of the lockdown beginning in the United States?
For us, when it became apparent something was changing now, that day I mark as 3/11. And there's reasons for it, too. We're doing research right now to tie it to other very religious texts, because these jokers always try to usurp or inherit some authenticity in this undefensible game that's going on for the liberty and the freedom of all human beings everywhere, apparently.
All right. Well, let me play this from Jeff Censored channel on YouTube. It's a letter of warning coming from Spain, and I know that most of this is true because I interviewed my friend Oli Damagard, who is in Spain, and he said the exact same thing. They literally are not allowed to leave their flats, their apartments, their homes for just about any reason. They can't even go sit on the beach alone under any circumstances. They can't do anything in Spain. Let me play at least a minute of this.
I'm currently in Spain. In the U.S., you have no idea what is happening in Spain and Italy. March 13 was the last day of school. We were asked to stay home for 2 weeks to allow COVID-19 danger to pass and avoid more victims. Everyone felt they were doing it out of responsibility and a sense of community and fear. We were supposed to start March 16th, but it kept getting pushed closer and closer, and I barely had time to get some food and water. On March the 13th, the stores had security guards and lines in front. On March the 14th, Grace and I were able to sit at the beach for 5 minutes. Then we were told to go home ASAP. The police was fining people 200 pounds if found outside. We rushed home, and Grace has not been outside her apartment for 2 months since those 5 minutes on the beach. Since March 16th, as we were home, the rules have changed. They become stricter every day, and the fines got higher and higher. We have extremely strict rules. We have lost freedom completely. I have no idea this could happen. Until you experience this, you absolutely have no idea what it means. Only one person is allowed out of the house, and only to the nearest food store or pharmacy. Police patrolling area stops, people and checks, receipts and address. Everything is closed. Businesses are dying. Use of the car is only to go to essential work, and only one person per car, and you need a special permit signed by an employer. Anyone who is under 18 is not allowed out at all. Children have been locked in apartments for 2 months. Even dogs are not allowed out, they're allowed out, but only 10 meters from home.
I'm going to pause it. I want to play more of this, but can you hear that okay?
Yeah, Italy and Spain got it hard because there's not that many people compared to where we are. And you'll notice the numbers you see on the news are all derived from supposed population of states. I'm in Rhode Island, so of course it's the least numbers. It's all just, the algorithms figure out what they're going to figure. But I've got some actually good news. On the news, they're showing that Italy, every street is empty. That's not actually what's going on. I was sent video twice today from people on the streets of Italy. There are big protests going on there. And you're not going to catch Fox and CNN and MSNBC because they are the enemy. And they're not going to tell you the truth. They're just going to keep yelling the same C word that they've been yelling since this started and not tell you about all the protests. There are huge protests going on in California. As a matter of fact, Jaron, I heard, was out at one of them. That things are going on all over. You're just not hear about it. And this is part of how information war. This is war in the modern era. We don't use bullets and bombs in the modern era because people have started to grow up too much for that kind of thing. This is about information. This is an information war. And when you control the information, for those who don't know any better than to turn off the damn television, because that is your worst enemy and always has been since its inception, and use other sources to get information, you're going to feel hopeless. You're going to feel beat down because that information has been designed to do exactly that, to beat you down to the ground. But I would remind you, anyone who grew up in the United States of America, when I came up, we were told this was the home of the free and the brave. If we deserve that title, we're going to probably have to show it pretty quickly. If we can do it like adults, that would be great, because I suspect that the next thing coming is they're starting to mess with the food supply chains. We saw this coming, almost like the four horsemen of the apocalypse, right? First one is getting people sick. Second one is famine. You can see the games that get played. My point here is we're in the majority here, and we have the right to demand a decent life. Hopefully, people won't lose order to do that, because I suspect if people lose order, an iron-fisted response will be right behind it. But if you act like adults and say, sorry, we need better than this, and a lot of people do that, I suspect we'll see better than this pretty quickly. The truth is, we all feel beat to the ground, but that's just because of the information that's easily accessible. If you look a little deeper, there are millions of people thinking exactly what you're thinking right now. I promise you.
Well, that's right. And the reason I want to continue to play this is I just want to drive home for folks what's happening in Spain as they isolate the population. When you isolate a population and you make it illegal to go outside and to commune with others, you take away the power of the people. And the point I would make about this country being so large is that we have 50 Spains. And we can see what's going on in Michigan. That correlates a lot with what's going on in Spain, according to this person. But many other states, the opposite is true. South Dakota, I think, being one of them. But listen to the rest of this, because this person is feeling quite desperate.
Children have not seen sunlight in 2 months. The fines are now a minimum of $2,000. Now, you know, here in Toronto, Stan, it's $5,000 for breaking the 6 feet sort of distancing. That's Toronto, Rainbow Unicorn Land. And yes, that is a fine we get if we talk to someone outside of the house, even with social distancing. Police brutality has become a big issue. People have changed. They now call police on people they see on the street. The police arrive in a group and beat the person up. People on balconies clap. This stressful prison situation has created pain and tension. It has removed compassion and a sense of community. Terror of numbers of contagion rising make people hateful towards anyone in the streets. I know, I talk about this with myself walking around. Because any person outside can cause us to be caged longer. People are hanging from these artificially inflated numbers, desperate to find a sliver of hope to see sunlight. Again, as the government keeps on promising fast release if everyone behaves. And the fake numbers go down, but the day of prison release gets pushed further and further out. It's impossible now to get together and protest. We are a broken community.
That's the part I wanted to get to. We are a broken community. So again, think about what's going on in Michigan, and I think it correlates a lot with what we're seeing in Spain. Other states in the Union here in the United States, fortunately, that's not the case. Not every governor is a tyrant. However, the point I want to make, Crow, and I'll play the clip in a second, is that if we are to fall to this tyranny, we will be our own prison officers. We will be our own slave masters. And if that's the case, the cops will not support and enforce the Constitution. They will enforce and support the tyranny of these governors.
Yeah, I'm still banking that there's more adults than we think there are. Is every police officer going to be willing to do the wrong thing? Is he not going to realize that he has a mother, that he has a sister and a brother and children? Is he going to forget that everybody wants their children to do better than they did? I don't think everybody's ready to forget that. And it's unfortunate what's going on in these smaller locales that already kind of had a bit of fascism, like Italy. They've got a fascist tax police there that's basically just like the mafia. We've covered it before, but here it's different. Here there is a right to bear arms. Here it is big, massively big in the United States. And not only that, the vast majority of us who are over, 40, can remember the idea of home of the free and the brave, can remember the analog age, can remember what's been given up here. And I can only stress, I think that this is being pushed to a head. I think it's going to come to a head, and I think that's part of the plan. But if people conduct themselves like adults and just simply protest in an adult manner, I think that's a critical thing to think about, because we've seen how much kind of assets they've mobilized. And we've seen that regardless of what the presidents have sworn an oath to, nobody's following the Constitution, which is a bit ironic, because the Constitution, if it was ever reinstated in a meaningful way, would collapse so much. Even the Department of Homeland Security, it's unconstitutional. We're going to have constitutional experts on Crow 777 radio just to delineate all the things that slipped while everyone forgot what the Constitution meant. But here's an interesting thing. I saw two guys, head of a university, top two guys at a university, and I won't name it, who had been in a university that's been there for more than 150 years, and they were commiserating, saying this university was here during the Civil War. It was here during World War I. It was here during World War II, and we never shut our doors. So what the hell's going on here? Then the senior of the two administrators of that university said, here's a funny thing, and I doubt many people know it. When you go to Washington, D.C., and you see all the beautiful buildings, the ones built on the old classical style, he said every one of those buildings is constitutional, and every other one that does not look like that is unconstitutional. And then there were things pointed out, like the Constitution provides for a country to make treaties, but those treaties have to be made with other countries, not with places like the UN or the WHO. Those are not countries. No treaty can be made there. So I would also point out that there are founding documents that the last guy that we know right now, Trump, swore allegiance to, kind of, to the best of his ability, whatever cop-out language that is. My point being is that Constitution has to totally go away for all this to work out in the direction we see it traveling. Will people let it? It's pretty clear we don't have time to form new groups and make things we don't have, but we do have that. May not be perfect, may not be what everyone's always dreamed of, but it would do away with so much of what is going on. And I think these are critical things to remember. 20 years ago, they couldn't have pulled off what they're pulling off now because people just wouldn't have stood for it, period.
Well, that's my point. And, I've been saying time and time again here recently that just 3 or 4 months ago, we couldn't have imagined this happening in the United States of America, the land of the free, the home of the brave. And the point I want to drive home is, and a friend of mine just wrote an article about this, Mark, which I posted at SGTReport.com the other day. Do oaths matter? Well, yeah, they matter. They matter a hell of a lot. But here's the problem, my friend. Sheriffs, like the ones you're about to see in this clip, which I just played in my last interview, sheriffs like this swore an oath. They didn't swear an oath to unconstitutional executive orders. They swore an oath to uphold and protect and stand for the Constitution. But in Wisconsin, we're seeing this.
Hi, Amy.
Hi.
I'm Deputy Everhart with the Sheriff's Department. So, are you aware that we're in a stay-at-home order right now?
Yeah, obviously.
By the government?
Yes, I am aware.
Okay, you're aware of that?
I am aware.
So I don't need to explain that to you?
No, you don't need to explain that to me.
I can if you need me to.
Go. You can because your officer was just here 2 weeks ago.
Okay, do you need me to
and
explain
he
it to you or
explained
no?
it to me that you guys weren't enforcing that order.
Oh, we're about to.
Okay.
So you understand it though?
Okay, so why are you here?
Because your daughter is going to play at other people's home and you're allowing it to happen.
They were over here as well. So
Okay.
are you
and
here?
They've been talked to
Okay.
about it. So
No,
now
I
I'm talking to
understand.
you,
Okay.
and so either you can acknowledge it or you can argue
I'm
it.
acknowledging it.
Okay, stop having your kid go by other people's home.
Okay, I acknowledged it. Anything else?
Nope, that was it. Apparently, there was some other
I
issue
acknowledged it.
before
I acknowledged
Okay,
it.
good.
Anything
Thank you.
else?
Yeah.
Okay, so then the female Nazi sheriff is demanding her last name, which the woman refuses to get. My point is, if we fall to tyranny, it will be because tyrants like these sheriffs embrace tyranny and they get off on being authoritarians, and they will be the enforcers of tyranny. The sheriff's deputy could have embraced liberty or authoritarianism, and what did he embrace? Unfortunately, not liberty. And to me, it's shocking.
Yeah, he broke every oath he ever took, didn't he? So that's indefensible. So everything he just directed or that came out of his mouth was in the military, we would have called that an illegal order. This is no different than a private. I was in the Marine Corps. One of the things you're told is, when you get in there, you got to follow orders. And if an officer gives you an order, you will follow it at all costs with one exception. If that officer gives you an illegal order. And by the way, I told a base commander that I would not take inoculations my last 3 or 4 weeks over in Asia. They threatened me with a court-martial. They threatened me with everything. I considered it an illegal order. I stood my ground. They did nothing. and I did not take the 3-series inoculation they admitted had never been tested by the Food and Drug Administration or whoever does it. My point here is I suspect if enough adults conduct themselves as that lady was asserting, those cops are going to have to rethink what they're doing. And I'm not going to accept that every cop is that far gone, that they're willing to become, cast members of 1984 for real, because that's where it's headed. When a police officer comes and tells you what you can do with your children and where you can go, that is a violation of the Constitution of the United States.
And what I'm trying to do here with these broadcasts and bringing people on like you to process this stuff is to get this on the historical record, that in just a few months, we've gone from the land of the free and the home of the brave to what you just saw there in that clip from Wisconsin. A sheriff telling an American citizen, you can't let your child go to the neighbor's house to play, and scolding her, talking down to her like she is a prisoner in his prison camp.
Unreal.
It cannot be overstated how beyond the pale this is now all becoming. And if people stand for it, then we will, look, what is the old quote? You will live under the exact amount of tyranny you're willing to stand for.
That's right. That's right. And I suspect when this goes out, there's a good chance that gentleman might get to see how he acted. And maybe if he has to look back at himself acting in that way, maybe he'll rethink it. And I think a lot of people would. And I think if their family was being treated in a similar manner, they wouldn't appreciate it. And I think everybody needs to keep in their mind, you don't have to be told what's right. What we just witnessed is clearly so far from right as to be indefensible. The question becomes, did we ever deserve the idea that this was the home of the free and the brave? We've lost it for a long time, but did we deserve it? Do we deserve it now? I say yes, we do. And I say yes, we need to stand up and demand the things that we know are correct. It's pretty clear. We're looking at the largest coup d'etat that the world has ever seen. And it's everything, all of it. Not just the enchilada, the restaurant that makes it, the factory that made the ingredients, the supply chain that got it, everything. Everything, everywhere is what's going for here. If they get their way, the people living best in the world will be in the middle of Africa somewhere where they're too remote to be messed with. That's how bad it could get. But again, did we ever deserve to be called the home of the free and the brave? We're going to find out. And it's not going to be in 20 years. It's going to be pretty quick here.
All right. So I retweeted something from Really Graceful. Here's another topic that we need to talk a little bit about today. And I retweeted what Really Graceful shared about Bill Gates here. And I wrote, Bill Gates claims to be an expert on vaccines and therapy. And he wants you and everyone else on Earth to take his coronavirus vaccine before life can ever, quote unquote, return to normal. What do you think about that? And 170 people weighed in. They all hate Bill Gates. The wave of popular opinion right now is so far and away against Bill Gates that the man is probably right now one of the most hated people in this country. That's the good news. The bad news is I also tweeted today about Operation Warp Speed, which is this. President Trump's Operation Warp Speed aims to rush a coronavirus vaccine. Now here's the thing, Crow. In the president's defense, in his public statements about this, he prefers therapeutics to a vaccine. And I got a lot of feedback in the comments when I tweeted about this saying optics are important, to which I say, but Gates and Fauci are still a part of this narrative, and both are corrupt. So if optics are important, then why not get rid of Fauci, and why not disavow everything coming out of Gates and the Gates Foundation?
People are still clinging to that thread, huh? Some magical guy finally got here that's going to be helping us. I've had that promise every 4 years for the entirety of my life, and I've never seen it happen once. And by the way, we had an Italian speaker on my show that translated the name Fauci to its meaning. You know what it means? It means the jaws of a carnivore or the jaws of a wolf. That's what Fauci's name means.
You got to be kidding me.
No, people need to wake up. These kind of Masonic name magic games and the toponomy and the onomology and all the things that are being pushed, and they're still looking at the enemy and acting like he's going to help in some way. It's beyond the pale. It's almost infantile in its delivery. What's gone on here is that regardless of what side anyone's been on for my lifetime, They were cueing the stage for what's going on now. We can all remember back to 2001. Does everyone realize what that was about now? I could go back 20 years all the way to the early 60s when I was born, and I could show up tee-up after tee-up. I could show them on the red side. I could show them on the blue side. So if people aren't ready to let go of their security blanket, I don't know what to say about that, because we're so far beyond trusting any of these people. And by the way, Mr. Gates, as far as I know, he dropped out of school and has never had any medical training of any kind. And by the way, I will go to my grave before anyone jabs me with a needle of any kind of inoculation ever again. And it's against my human rights if they try to do different.
Well, that's absolutely right. 100%. I'm with you. And I've sent out tweets about Bill Gates and a mandatory vaccine. Where do people stand? And I can try to call that up and show people here in a second. But we're talking thousands of comments saying, hell no, I will not take their mandatory jab. So that's the line in the sand for a lot of people.
Mandatory my butt. I own my person, my body. I own the corporate person and the living man inside. Not happening. I make decisions about what goes into me or what doesn't. And anyone else can go to hell who thinks they have the authority.
All right. Is there anything else that was on your radar that you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, I just want, don't let the controlled media. So many people are just watching the controlled narrative. And did you notice as this started, here, let me do this little thing. You know how many months it takes for an average television commercial to get produced? Usually it takes like 8-9 months for the simplest of television commercials. How was it that every commercial on television was singing the same song within a week of this happening, within a week of March 11? How was it that the Michigan legislature had a pandemic budget approved in June of 2019? How are these things? I think we all know how these things are. But what people need to keep foremost in their mind is there are many millions of people thinking exactly what you are thinking right now. So don't be fooled that you're all alone and that they've got you cornered, and to lose your humanity and become one of those people who will rat out a neighbor as if this was 1984 and your name was Winston. Come on, we're grown past that now. There's a lot of people who are fed up to their eyeballs. So don't be fooled by the controlled information. And lastly, every one of us knows what right and wrong is. Nobody has to tell you what right and wrong is. And I would just make this statement: what good are rights if you're going to accept wrongs? And that's a critical thing to think about. I won't be accepting wrongs, and I will look out for the people around me, and I will stand up to death if I have to for the things that I feel are right. I think it's really that simple. And above all, act like an adult. Don't lose order.
Amen. Well said, my friend. I found that tweet. If you loathe vaccine-pushing globalist eugenicist Bill Gates, and if you plan to refuse to take any vaccine he funds, mandatory or not, please retweet this. And 3,600 people did. That, I think, is important. The man is hated. And I wrote also on April 27th, feels like war is being waged on humanity at this very moment, doesn't it? Shelter in place. Yeah, shelter in place. Go bankrupt for your own good. Stand down, GI. If they aren't arrested, they won't stop, for they are waging war against us right now. And then I shared a tweet also from my friend Spiro. Bill Gates, phase 2, he says, will probably be a bioterror attack. So that's the other card. They played the pandemic card, Crow, but they still have other cards to play. And the card they're playing right now in Canada, based on a false flag or based on the Nova Scotia shooting, is to disarm the population in Canada so they can't possibly ever fight back again.
Well, they don't have that right in this country. And again, people go look up what I think is called the DICT Act. I hope I have that right. I didn't know we were going to talk about it. It basically is ironclad. We have the right to bear arms in this country. Hopefully, there's no need for those arms. Hopefully, people will act like adults. But, I think we all know right now the only real contagion is fear. And so if you're not afraid, then you're free of the contagion. And above all things, we have to start standing up for what is right. And when people so flagrantly cross the line, they need to be told. And this needs to start happening a lot. And I've seen quite a bit of evidence that people are not playing this game, refusing to give their name, informing the people, my name belongs to me, and I don't have to give it to you, asserting their human rights. What's going on here is a bid for a world takeover, but each of us has freedom of choice, the divine spark of God in each of us. With that comes freedom of choice. Anyone who forcibly takes your freedom of choice is violating universal law, and that's why we see these games to convince you to give up your own freedom to choose. And I'm here to tell you, if you give up your freedom to choose, then you never deserved it in the first damn place. If you can just remember that you're carrying the divine spark, that this world was made for you, and human beings as a whole are in charge of this place, keep in mind you were given freedom of choice and the divine spark, and you need to defend those things with everything you have.
That's why I have you on. You lift our spirits. I really appreciate it. You're a free thinker, one of the smarter people out there I know, and people do request via email for me to get you on time and time again. Crow, can you remind people how they can find you and your important work out there in the interwebs?
Sure. The only thing I'm pushing is my private site because I serve my own content to maintain free speech. That's crow777radio.com. That's CRROW777radio.com. There are fraud sites, so that's the only real one. And just buck up, people. This is happening. What's going on is happening. We're going to get a reset. But every time there's a reset, possibilities remain. Could be that a lot of the things we didn't like about before, those could be started in a different direction. Don't lose hope. Don't let the damn controlled message make you believe that you're all alone in this world, because let me tell you something. There are endless people thinking the same thing you're thinking right now, and I'm one of them. I want to wish you all well. Take care of all the fellow human beings around you.
Absolutely. And we will end this call with a moment of levity. It sort of brings Crow and I full circle on the topics that brought us together in the first place. Never forget that the enemies of humanity, the same people that want to take your right to defend yourself and your family, they want to take your guns, they want you to take their vaccines and make them mandatory. The same people tell us they landed on a little thing called the moon with the technology you see right there before your eyes.
That is some kick butt tinfoil, man. Made it all the way to the moon.
And it was robust enough to pack away a dune buggy as well. So there you have it.
3 cheers for Reynolds Wrap.
All right, Crow, thanks so much for coming on today. Appreciate you, man.
Thanks, man. Hang tough. We'll be okay if we stick together and do the right thing. Cheers.
Cheers. And guys, thank you so much for tuning in. We very much appreciate each and every one of you. And if you like this, do give it a like and share it within your sphere of influence on social media. And for real news 24/7, you guys can visit us directly every single day at sgtreport.com, the antidote to corporate propaganda. God bless. Bye-bye.
The blowback of these events is they want to control our body. They want to control our immune system. They want to put a chip in us, and they need us to want it because it's the top-down control. The higher up you go on this pyramid, the more you see little, tiny, weak, scared dudes. Like Bill Gates